Hello everybody, I'm Ajit K. Mishra, your course instructor for Literature and Coping Skills. I'm back again with another set of lectures for you. This time we're going to talk about personality. You all know personality is a very complex area because most often people tend to misconceive the idea of personality. So instead of focusing on the real aspects of personality, people generally focus on the physiological aspects, as a result of which people think that if somebody is tall, somebody is short, somebody is fatty, obese, or somebody is lean and thin, those characteristics in fact influence somebody's personality and also present those things. But that's not the case. I'm going to walk you through the idea of personality in the next two lectures, including one today, so that you finally get to know what personality is all about, how it remains with us as an integral part of our existence, and how it develops over the period of time, and the theories that help us develop an insight into our ideas of personality. So let's start. In this lecture, I am going to focus on these important aspects of personality, starting with definitions of personality. I have already told you that it's a very complex area and researchers have been trying to map this area. Therefore, this is an ever-evolving area. So, I have picked a few definitions that will serve our purpose of understanding personality. Then I am going to talk about the characteristics of personality, what personality is, what it is not, how it is defined, how it is developed, and a variety of other things. I'm going to focus on the nature of personality as well, so that we get to know what personality is all about, how it functions, how it affects our existence, and so on. And I'm also going to talk about the shaping of personality, which is in fact a very important concept for our understanding of the idea of personality. So let's move and start with the definitions first. But before I start with the definitions, I must tell you that personality is all about the differences that we have from one another. Imagine we come across a variety of people every day. We meet them, we observe them, we interact with them, and the most important thing that strikes us every time we do so is the differences that we have from one another. For example, somebody may be talkative, somebody may be very quiet, somebody may be absolutely friendly, somebody may be indifferent, somebody may be callous as well, somebody may be very active, somebody may be extremely lazy. Now, when we take out these words that we just use to describe people of different kinds, like talkative, active, or lazy, now these are the words that in fact present our personality. So our personality is the characteristic difference that we have from one another. So therefore, it's important that we adopt a very careful approach towards our understanding of personality, and the personality psychologists have been trying to do this. They've been trying to understand and describe these aspects of personality. So let's start with the definitions first. I have picked a definition that has been given to us by the American Psychological Association that says a personality refers to individual differences in characteristic patterns of thinking, feeling, and behaving. I've just talked about it, citing the example that we all are different from each other because we think differently, we feel differently, and we also behave differently. And these differences, in fact, continue to create our personality. So therefore, it's important that we understand these differences in our thinking, in our feeling, and in our behaviors as well. The second definition has been taken from Randy Larson, who says that a personality is a stable, organized collection of psychological traits and mechanisms in the human being that influences his or her interactions with and modifications to the psychological, social, and physical environment surrounding them. This is a very, very important definition for our understanding of the idea of personality, because Larson is focusing on personality as a stable concept. That means personality doesn't change frequently. If we have a certain kind of personality, if we develop a certain kind of personality in ourselves, it means that it's not going to change frequently. It may experience some moderate changes, but will not change drastically. So therefore, it's a stable and organized collection of psychological traits. This collection of psychological traits is very, very organized. So this organized collection, in fact, makes our personality stable, and then these things influence our interactions, and they also lead to the modifications of our psychological, social, and the physical environment surrounding us. So if we look at this definition, it may appear to be a little technical because it comes to us from a psychologist, but Larson and his friends are also talking about the same things. They're also talking about these characteristic differences in the patterns of our thinking, feeling, and behaving, the way we think, we feel, and we interact with our psychological, social, and physical environment. So, in a way, these two definitions may appear to be different, but they are pointing towards the same elements. Let's take a look at the other definitions. A third definition. It's taken from Carl Jung, the father of American psychology, who was of the view that personality is the supreme realization of the innate idiosyncrasy of a living being. The innate idiosyncrasy, what exactly is that? The uniqueness, the differences that are innate. And these are those idiosyncrasies or this uniqueness or the differences that make us unique, that differentiate us from others. Therefore, they are unique and they are idiosyncratic as well. It is an act of high courage flung in the face of life. High courage because we have to interact, we have to behave in a certain environment. It may be a psychological environment, maybe a physical environment, maybe a social environment. But we behave. That requires a great amount of courage in the face of life, because it's not an easy thing, because we have to behave, we have to act in a certain manner so that we can carry our lives forward. That requires a great deal of courage. The absolute affirmation of all that constitutes the individual. It's the absolute affirmation of all that constitutes the individual. If my individuality is constituted by something, it has to be absolutely affirmed, so that I emerge as an individual, as a unique individual, as an individual that is separate or different from all other individuals around me. So Jung is also focusing on these differences. The most successful adaptation to the universal condition of existence, coupled with the greatest possible freedom of self-determination. So that is how we actually move towards self-determination, and this can happen only when we are successful in adapting to the universal conditions of existence. So that requires you to act, behave, think and feel in certain ways. So in a way, Jung is also focusing on those critical elements of personality that are thinking, feeling and behaving that the other two definitions, the earlier definitions, have focused on. Let's move to the last, the fourth definition. According to neurologist Paul Rowe, personality is an individual's predisposition to think certain patterns of thought and therefore engage in certain patterns of behavior. So, of all these definitions that I have picked for our purpose of understanding the idea of personality, this is the simplest and very, very straight. Therefore, it's the shortest, in fact. Rowe's definition of personality is very clear and straightforward, as it suggests that an individual's predisposition to think certain patterns of thought. As an individual, we have certain unique ways of thinking or developing thought patterns. And these thought patterns enable us to engage in certain patterns of behavior. So, in his short definition of personality, Rowe has repeated the word pattern in the definition. So, therefore, that word pattern becomes extremely important because it draws our attention towards certain patterns that are regular and frequent, whether they are about thoughts or about our behaviors. So, if we synthesize these four definitions of personality, we come to the idea that personality is all about the differences that individuals have from one another on the basis of how they think, how they feel and how they behave. So, that is how we approach the idea of personality, not in the way people generally think about personality in terms of somebody's physical appearance or physical build. That has nothing to do with personality. So, personality is all about these three important elements. The question is, does personality matter? The answer will certainly be yes, it matters. If the answer is no, then we need not worry about what personality is, whether we have a personality or not, and there is absolutely no need to think about it at all. But that's not the case. The answer most often is yes. Personality does matter because it's such an important element of our existence that we cannot afford to ignore it. It matters because of two very important things. The first is personal success or failure. We all know that we exist because we are either successful or we do not exist because we are unsuccessful. We feel like leading this life when we are successful, and we'll feel like putting an end to this life when we are not successful. We'll be thoroughly disappointed with life and therefore would like to put an end to it. So, personality matters when it comes to personal success or failure, because personal success, that includes intrapersonal success and interpersonal success as well, is largely determined by our personality elements. So, therefore, it's important that we know that our personal success or failure is dependent on the type of personality that we have, the type of disposition that we have, and which leads to the type of attitudes and value systems that we create for ourselves. So, when it comes to interpersonal success or failure, we need to understand ourselves extremely well so that we emerge as an individual and we find it easy to interact with people around us. We do not either shy away or we do not enter into conflicts with people around us. So we have a healthy intrapersonal relationship. Therefore, we also have a healthy interpersonal relationship. If it is not so, that means it will lead to failure. The second thing, that is health and well-being. Of course, our personality does determine and influence our health, both physical and mental health, and our overall well-being. So, if we do not have the right kind of personality, if we do not nurture our personality well, if we do not take care of our personality, that means we'll definitely find ourselves in the grip of certain mental disorders, mental disturbances, and these mental disturbances will definitely multiply, compound to lead to our physical deterioration, the deterioration of our physical health. So therefore, health and well-being are very closely associated ideas, very closely allied conditions. Our physical and mental well-being or health are also influenced to a large extent by the personality types that we have and how we nurture, how we take care of those personality types. So therefore, personality matters. Is personality always present in us? The answer is yes. It is always present. It cannot be separated. It is so integral to our existence that it cannot be separated. Therefore, it is always present in us. Personality is a combination of the innate dispositions and inclinations and the influence of environmental factors. Now, this is a very important concept which will help us understand personality in a better way. It's a combination of certain innate dispositions and inclinations. That means we have certain dispositions that are inherent, natural, hereditary, and we have certain approaches that are also innate and inherent. Those are the inclinations. And along with these dispositions and inclinations that are inherent, we also pass through stages of the environmental influence. I mean, there are certain environmental factors that influence our disposition as well. It's not that the innate disposition will finally come up and be reflected as our personality. It may not be so. It might get into some kind of combination with the environmental influence, and then a combination of both the things will come out as our personality or as our disposition. So therefore, we need to understand this combination of innate dispositions and inclinations on one hand, and the influence of the environmental factors. For example, if somebody is born with certain dispositions, certain innate, inherent dispositions and inclinations, and if that person is made to be brought up in a certain environment, in a certain cultural condition, the person will definitely acquire certain influences, certain dispositions as a result of the influences of the environmental factors. So, a combination of his or her innate dispositions and the environmental factors will finally determine what kind of personality the person will have. Therefore, it's important. Personality is stable. We all know that. Most of the theorists are of the view that personality is stable. It doesn't change frequently, it doesn't change substantially. But at the same time, they are also of the view that personality can undergo certain changes. Those changes may be minimal, but those changes can happen to the personality. And those changes can be radical when the personality, or when a person, an individual, is suddenly exposed to intense emotional experiences. It may be an accident of an extreme kind, so that might lead to a sudden change in the personality type or the disposition of that person. But that apart, personality is generally stable. So personality has different components and characteristics. There's no doubt about it. It has different components and characteristics. I'm going to focus on this in greater detail. And finally, personality influences thinking, feelings and behavior. We have already got to know about that from the definitions that we discussed a while ago. At the same time, personality also enables adaptability. If you have the right kind of personality, if you have an easygoing, flexible personality, you can easily adapt to any condition. If you have a very rigid, difficult personality type, then you will always find it very difficult to adapt to conditions. But personality ultimately enables adaptability. It makes us adaptable. And finally, personality empowers our survival skills, because we know we need those skills to survive. I have already discussed safe and survival modes and the type of skills that we require in both the modes, especially the survival modes, so that we can come out of the survival mode and return to the safe mode. In order to be able to do so, we need certain survival skills, and our personality in fact empowers those survival skills in us. We'll get to know how. So let's take a quick look at the characteristics of personality so that we understand what they are. I have listed 4 here. It has a certain sense of consistency. That means if I have a certain type of personality, then there is every possibility, every reason that I'll behave according to that particular personality type in a variety of situations. The situations may differ from one another, but I'll behave in a similar manner in those different situations. The second characteristic of personality is that although it's a psychological construct, it is also influenced by our biological needs and types. So therefore, it's a combination of psychological and physical elements. The third, behaviors and actions. How we behave, how we act are largely influenced by our personality types. Whether we get along with people or we're not comfortable in the company of people. So everything is determined by how we behave or how we act by personalities. And then multiple expressions. So it's not that we express in a singular way. In fact, we express in multiple ways. For example, we do not only behave in a certain manner, we also express ourselves through the kinds of relationships that we have, through the kinds of associations that we have with people around us, and a variety of other things. So, personality is also characterized by multiple expressions. And then, to the most important of all these things, the shaping of personality. How are personalities, or how is a personality shaped? Is it shaped at all? Yes, it is shaped, because there are several factors that influence the personality of a person. Therefore, it's important for us to take a close look at the shaping of personality, and especially those factors that result in the shaping of personality. The ongoing interactions of heredity, environment, parenting and socialization. These are the four most important factors that result in the shaping of personality, because these factors combine and they also continue to shape personality over time. It's not that they shape personality for one occasion only and that's exactly where it stops. It doesn't continue at all. That's not the case. They continue to shape personality over time. Although personality doesn't change, but it can experience certain changes. It may not change substantially. So the first important element is heredity. That means our innate dispositions and inclinations. And then environment, the type of environment we are exposed to, we are subjected to, also exercises a tremendous amount of influence on the shaping of our personality. And then parenting, the type of regulations and control mechanisms that we are subjected to during our early stages of growth also determine how our personality will finally be. And then finally, the socialization process. Beyond the parental or the parenting process, we enter the socialization process and we begin to interact with society, and that's exactly when and where our personality is also influenced. And this is a continuous process and gets influenced over time. Although personality doesn't change substantially, but it will continue to witness and experience certain minimal changes in it. That brings us to the age-old debate between nature and nurture that also takes up these ideas of heredity and environment. There have been theorists who held strongly that it's all about nature. So environment doesn't play any role at all in the shaping of personality. It is all about one's innate disposition, genetic coding or genetic designing, or heredity. So they never thought that environment can play any role in the shaping of personality. So that's the reason why those people always believed that it's all about nature. To cite such a philosopher, it was Rousseau, who very strongly believed that it's all about nature and the environment doesn't play any role in the shaping of personality. On the other hand, people like John Locke, who strongly held that the mind is like a clean slate, therefore it's very popularly called the clean slatism concept. The mind is like a clean slate and the environment will ultimately determine how the personality will turn out to be. But then to put this debate to rest, we have a few contemporary researchers that have established the fact that both the nature, heredity or biological determinism and environmental determinism, they are combined to shape our personality. And this was established by the twins research, which was conducted by making the twins live in very different environmental conditions. As they grew up, it was observed that both the twins showed certain different attitudes and behaviors. So it was very clearly established that nature and nurture are combined in our personalities. And then socialization and life positions, they also modify our behavior, and those also result in certain consequential outcomes. The way we are socialized, if I have been socialized in a certain manner, so that I come to treat women with disrespect, that will definitely reflect in my personality, and that will also reflect in the kind of life positions that I adopt or take. So the shaping of personality also happens over the debate between reason and emotion. Just imagine you call a person emotional and you call the other person rational. Which of these two persons do you think will be treated with respect? Of course, the person who has been referred to as rational, not the person who has been referred to as emotional. So like the nature-nurture debate, the debate between reason and emotion has been waged for a long time, and people have preferred to be rational than emotional, because rationality has been overvalued in our cultures and emotionality has been undervalued. So if a person is rational, that means you're logical, you're analytical, and if you're emotional, you're extremely intuitive and irrational even. So that's the reason why people do not prefer to be tagged emotional. Rather, they prefer to be tagged rational. But recent studies have established the fact that both thought and reason on one side and emotions are our guiding factors. They in fact help us move in one direction. It's not that they are separate things and we can move properly with either of them. That may not be the case. So we need both of them, a combination of reason and emotions, because they perform very different actions and they help us in different ways, and we need both the ways. We need to conceptually order our world, organize, plan and solve our problems with the help of our rational self, and with the help of our emotional self we need to move. We need to determine what to seek and what to avoid. We need to strengthen our bonding, our relationships. So therefore, both of them are equally important. Both of them play an important role in our personality. So that's how we come to the end of this lecture. These are the references from where I have borrowed the ideas for this lecture. And you might have understood that personality is very important, and we need to adopt a cautious approach to our understanding of personality so that we get to know what it is and how it functions. And finally, we can determine, we can use our personality for the betterment of our existence. So thank you for joining me. I'll meet you again.